Hey guys, what's going on? It's been a little while since I've posted a new video. I've been having a lot of different things going on in my life, so it's kind of kept me away from doing videos. But I'm back and I should be doing these pretty consistently from now on. Today we are looking at the artist Feng Wei, and if you're new to this channel or this series, typically what it is that I do is I find an artist it is that I really like, I really appreciate their work, and then I try to see what sort of things it is that we can break down from them, see what we can learn in terms of their style or their creative decisions it is that they're making with their work. So, as usual, any link to the artists that I find is going to be in the description box below. And so there's a couple of things that I notice right off the jump with this that is very key to this guy's style, as we'll see as we go through some of the pieces. I believe this is for like his own intellectual property. And he does this thing that he consistently does throughout multiple pieces where he breaks the frame it is that he's creating, which I think gives it this really beautiful and dynamic silhouette to the overall image, right? Because when we think about it, we already have this kind of silhouette of the piece of paper, even though we have a white background here and we're not thinking about it that way. But when it sits on this right here and it breaks this frame, it gives it this kind of 3D effect. And I like how he does this in multiple different ways, right? He has the frame sitting back here, and he has these very organized oval shapes that are, in some ways, they're very similar to the very ornate shapes that we see on the frame itself, right? They both kind of have these circular shapes going on, and so it fits very, very nicely the way it is that he's kind of organized all of these circular shapes back here. And you can see he's kind of creating this kind of staircase kind of thing going on back here from the top most, right? And he's got a small one over here as well. And this is something it is that I mention a lot in my other videos, is this idea of design, right? If we go over here and we look at, if we take a circle and we do this, this is not design. There's no sense of design here, right? It's just 3 circles. But if you take one circle and then you start putting a little pattern around it, and then maybe you do another one like this, this starts to feel, well, let's take that away. It starts to feel like there's some sense of design, right? Maybe that's too many. Maybe I should do it more like this, right? That starts to feel like a design right there. There's big, there's medium, there's a small shape. And so when we look at the design of what it is that he's doing over here, we can see that he has all of these different kind of staircase of circles that are going down here, right? He's got these 5 main ones, and he's got 2 over here, and then of course he's got smaller ones. And you can see how it is that he can lead the eye downwards and how it all kind of curves with the gesture of the body itself, right? You have this kind of upward gesture here, and she's also doing this upward gesture, and her body is kind of doing this upward gesture as well as with this arm, right? And then of course we have the horse itself is kind of doing this upward gesture. So you have this sort of thing going on here, right? Same thing with these shapes down here. Notice how they point upwards with the spike tops. They point upwards, right? So this is a really dynamic way of setting up an illustration. It feels, in a lot of ways, it feels very chaotic whenever it is that you first look at it, because there's so much going on. But that's really just a testament to his level of design understanding, right? And another thing it is that I notice about these Chinese artists is that they are very experimental with the way it is that they do their rendering process. And so we'll take a look at that here in a moment. What I like about it, when I zoom in here, you'll see exactly what I mean. There is a a quality to the rendering that I think is very unique to what this guy is doing. As I zoom in here, to be completely honest with you, I just assume this guy is doing this digitally, but when I look at the line work, actually when I look really close at the line work, I would just really assume this is all done digitally, but it has a very traditional feel to it, right? He has this kind of traditional feel to where he's doing the sort of thing you'll do with line art, which is that you're basically following the lines as they curve around specific shapes, right? You have these specific shapes that are of this cloth, and he's suggesting the way that they move with just this line work, which is very different than if you were to do a strictly painterly kind of feel with the work, right? Because if you were just doing it with that, this would be way more rendered. But notice that he doesn't really do that. Instead, he uses the lines in order to describe the way that the fabric is folding, and the way it is that it's kind of churning in on itself. And then he's using these different little blocks of color that have like this kind of interesting texture on them to show you where exactly the folds in the fabric are, right? He's got all these different folds in the fabric, and here he's showing you that with this cool kind of color with the purple, right? With this, or well, it really isn't purple. It's probably more like like kind of a darkish blue. But he's got all these different kind of shapes in here, and it looks, honestly, it looks very chaotic, right? You would think that he would want to color this whole entire thing in this one color, but he really doesn't. He's more just dropping it in there, which is, again, something that's really interesting because it's not the way a lot of American artists would do it. Even the color choices it is that this guy is making, I went ahead and I color grabbed a few of the color choices he's making over here, and they're pretty unique, I would say, for an illustration like this. He's taking this green, this very strong green, and he's putting it next to this kind of muted purple, right? And then as we go up the illustration and we start looking at the rendering for something here and the rendering here, we run into the same thing, right? He's got this line work that he's using to describe it as if he's drawing a pen or a pencil drawing. You can even see it on the building itself. He's just following the curvature of the forms. And then it looks like underneath that, he's using textured color brushes to give this really interesting effect here, right? So he's using color and line as a way to show different forms of shadows. And you can see it's really interesting because he'll drop in this blue here, and he has this very minimal line work. And then he'll start to bring in other colors over here as he increases the amount of lines it is that he wants to show the shadow here, right? When it comes to this kind of design, I think this stuff is really, it's very well put together. It's very dynamic, and you can really tell this guy's a master at illustration. So let's take a look at a couple more. Again, like I said, we have a couple of the same sort of principles here, right? We have a circular shape right here. We have this implied circular shape that's back here, and we see that also in the ornate shapes. And then, of course, we see the same thing that we saw before, which are these repeating shapes. Now, what's interesting about this is the way that he plays around with asymmetry, right? So you could think about asymmetrical design versus symmetrical design in a number of different ways, right? He's using this background element of this temple back here, and its design, which is very symmetrical, right? He's got a same number of towers on either side, and then he's got this circular shape here, which is also kind of giving it this very symmetrical design, as well as the frame itself is very symmetrical, right? And instead of pushing the clouds out like he did in the previous one, he keeps those in. He keeps actually most of the background in, which makes us feel like the characters are stepping through like some sort of a window or something, right? And so he has this element where all of the background, except for this portion up here, is totally within the frame itself. And it's not breaking out of the frame. But then we have this asymmetrical element, which is leaning all the way over to one side and carrying through to the other, that is completely breaking out of the frame and is completely asymmetrical, right? And everything about these poses and everything about the way it is that he sets this up is really showing us how much thought he put into that, right? Because you kind of have this, you have a couple of different things going on here. You have this kind of swooping of this blue shape here. You have this swooping shape that's going up, and the same thing with this. This is going up, and it's all pointing us to this kind of dynamic between these two, right? This is where it is that our focal point is, and this is kind of an extra element that he's adding on to that. And I love these touches down here, right? I mean, he's got this kind of, the drawing itself feels very abstract with these two animals down here, and then of course we have one more element of the background that's pushing itself out of the frame. Very nice work. So I think we got two more. We'll take a look at two more. Again, we see the same sort of thing. He's got these inspirations that he's taking from, I would assume, Islamic art, especially like the tile decorations, or maybe it's Persian. I guess this would be, with the belly dancers, I guess this would be more of a Persian influence, right? But this is a really good example of taking something that might be a very familiar trope, such as doing something that has a fantasy illustration slant to it, and mixing in Art Deco. He's definitely, like, if we made a list of the different influences he definitely has an influence of Art Deco. I would say fantasy illustration. And I would say Islamic patterning. And then obviously he's using these very different influences, and then he's weaving them together with different motifs for each one of these illustrations, right? I mean, we can see the cloud as a motif. We can see that like I said, the patterning, whether it's like the patterning here, right? We've got this kind of triangular patterning, but it's really a circular pattern with triangular patterns in it, right? And then we see this same circular patterning going on the figures themselves. As we zoom in, we can see these flowers here. We can see the coins, the little beads or whatever. We can see them all over the dresses here. So, you know, he's picking his topic. He's not doing this arbitrarily. He's not just saying, you know, let me pick a bunch of things that have circles in them. He's picking his topic, and then he's organizing his illustrations around what it is that will make everything fit and feel cohesive. And so we have this interplay between circles and triangles throughout the entire piece. You know, we can see the triangles back here, and we can see them in the arches. And then obviously this is very much contrasted against the circular shapes of the clouds, right? And we have the same sort of thing going on here, which is, it's very beautiful. It starts to make the drawings feel like an Art Deco piece. They begin to feel very abstract in a sense, especially when you have these pieces breaking out down here, right? And of course we have this kind of triangle or diamond-like thing going on here between these four different figures. And then if we look back here, we can see this same sort of diamond shape, which is basically just two triangles, right? You can see that there. The other thing you notice is that, again, we have this kind of staircase, this hierarchy of where it is that he wants you to look, right? Or you could even say here. The way he positions the feet is even something that you would pay attention to, right? He's connecting them. He's connecting them by overlapping them, right? So if you wanted to think about the way it is that they overlap, it's something like that, right? And then obviously this one is connected as well. So what we've noticed so far is that there is a clear visual hierarchy that he's using. He's using this kind of back and forth sort of thinking in order to move your eye through a piece. You know, he's organizing things based off of patterns, based off of different types of shapes that he wants to explore in multiple different illustrations. That's why it is that all of these illustrations feel like they fit together. So I got one more, and it's actually totally different than the other pieces he did, but I had to include this one. This is one that I look at and I go, man, did he do this traditionally? Because it's, to do any kind of like really serious line work digitally is pretty difficult to do, at least for me. Maybe somebody in the comments can tell me if you have a particular program that you like to use for line art. Everybody says Clip Studio, but to me, I can't do it. And the Procreate brushes don't really work the same way. So it does make me think maybe this guy does do his stuff traditionally and then maybe he paints over it digitally or something. But regardless, you know, we can see some of the same design things going on in this piece. You know, we can see, even if you have just a black and white piece, we can see there's very strong contrast between different things, right? He has this circular frame that is giving us an empty space in order for us to get this very strong silhouette of this figure here that is connected to the tree that we see over here on the left, right? So we have this tree over here on the left with the different budding. God, what is this tree called again? Can't believe I'm forgetting it. Is it sakura tree? Sakura tree, yeah. So we have all these different. We have these different shapes over here that are offsetting the very heavy, strong black shape over here. And then, of course, we can see the same very strong black shape here on the bottom, which is giving us two big anchor points, right? And we can basically see that our eye is going to go in between here. You know, our eye will go elsewhere, but not really, because even when it goes up here, it's going to take a circular path and it's going to go back here. And what do we see? We see this same kind of staircase sort of thing that he has going on, right? So if we thought about it, again, in terms of the visual hierarchy, the way that he is organizing the different elements that he's portraying in this illustration, you know, we could say that we look up here and we see her, and our eye goes like this, and it goes down here, it goes here, and then it goes down to here, right? Seeing all the detail in between. And then, of course, we have these different elements here that are kind of boxing our eye in, right? Kind of keeping our eye from wandering off too far. So that's what I got for you guys today. This is kind of a late Merry Christmas video. yeah, there's going to be more videos coming up. Like I said, I have had an interesting last couple of months, but I'm back, and I'm going to have a whole bunch more stuff to show off. I've got some new illustrations that I've recently completed that are in my website. You can find my website, wesleyedwardsart.com. You can check that out. I've also got a couple of the comics that I was working on for the Philip K. Dick files. Those are available to download and check out for any of my Patreon subscribers. So you can check out my Patreon and the link in the description box. I'm going to be putting together some more in-depth tutorials as well. So if there's anything you guys would be interested in seeing me cover, feel free to let me know in the comments below. And thanks, guys. Take care.